want to be the best possible leader you can be? Do you want to be the leader your team truly deserves? Then you are in the right place. In this podcast, we share deeply personal stories of how successful leaders are powered by their purpose and anchored in their authenticity, how they connect who they are to how they lead and translate their purpose into everyday actions in good times and bad, at crossroads and crises, how they challenge status quo and existing paradigms and do different things differently. Mindful leadership is the greatest unlock for the future of work. Join us in reimagining the leadership of the future with me, your host, Shahana Banerjee, CEO of Just Human, on a mission to humanize the future of work. In this episode, we dive into a mega dose of inspiration with Shellye Archambeau. Ranked among the 100 most influential business leaders in America, she serves on the board of directors of Verizon, Roper Technologies, Okta, and Lineage, and was the iconic CEO credited with MetricStream's transformation. She is the author of the best-selling book Unapologetically Ambitious and is on a quest to help people reach their true potential through mentoring at scale, with her new venture, Ignite Ambition. Welcome, Shellye. It is such an honor to have you on our podcast today.
No, well, thanks so much for having me, Shahana. I've been looking forward to it.
You've impacted so many lives through your work and through your book, Unapologetically Ambitious. It is a treasure. What I love most is that you are unapologetically you, and that's inspiring. So let's dive right in. Tell us a bit about your life story and the people, the experiences, and influences who've helped you along your journey.
First of all, to really understand me, my drive, focus, what motivates me, if you don't mind, I just need to tell you kind of a little bit of background.
Of course.
And the background is I grew up the eldest of 4 children. My parents were crazy, Shahana. They had 4 children in less than 5 years. I mean, can you imagine?
That's ambitious.
4 kids,
too.
Nobody's in school, right? Half are in diapers. I'm just like, oh my gosh. But what that did is it made us a very close, tight family, right? Because we all the kids grew up together, etc. My father didn't have a college degree. And as a result, he had a family of 4 to feed. So he took every opportunity to improve his lot that he could. So we moved around a lot. I lived in 7 different states before I got to high school. So I was always that new kid, right, on the block in the school. And we also lived in areas where, frankly, there wasn't a lot of diversity. I mean, after my kindergarten, which was very diverse in Philadelphia, after that, not much, because they tried to move to areas that had the best public schools, so we could get the education we would need. So here I was being, one of the only, if not the only. And what happened is, this was the 60s and 70s. People didn't treat me very well. So I was bullied, I was beat up, I was teased. And I'd come home, complain. It's like, mom, this happened or that happened. It's not fair. And she would tell me, Shellye, life's not fair.
Oh my God.
Yeah. You're like, what? I mean, you're a kid. You get a lollipop, I get a lollipop. You get a turn, I get a turn, right? It's supposed to be fair. No, she was really clear. Life is not fair. Wow. So, what are you going to do about it? Is kind of the view I took. It's like, okay, life's not fair. So don't go looking for fairness. You just have to figure it out. And the other thing, her mantra was, because she would say, you can't control what people do to you. And they did some terrible things, and you can't control what they say to you. And they also said some nasty, bad things to me, but you can control how you respond. So don't let them win. And her whole thing about don't let them win was, if they impact how you feel about yourself, or they impact what you want to do, then they've won. They're controlling you. Don't let them win. So I share that because that's what really gave me my kind of focus and approach in life. So I realized life's not fair and I can't let them win. So I need to figure out, how do I improve my odds to get what I want? Because the odds are not in my favor. And that led me to become a very intentional person. So I always looked at, all right, what do I want? how can I improve my odds to get it, right? What do I need to do? So I became strategic, I became forward-looking, and I became a big planner.
Yeah.
And now when you look at the career, that's really what led me, because here I was, high school, and you have that, standard conversation with your junior high school guidance counselor, which is, do you want to go to college, right, or not? Yes, I want to go to college because in my family, education. Well, what do you want to do when you get out of college? I'm like, I have no idea. All I know is I want to be able to afford to keep my thermostat at 72 degrees in the wintertime.
Yeah.
I wanted to be able to eat out in restaurants, and I wanted to be able to travel, because those were all things I couldn't do. And she laughed and then realized I was dead serious. And then she said, well, what do you like to do? And to this, I give her a ton of credit, because I said, oh, that's easy. It's clubs. I was in like everything: American Field Service, National Honor Society, French Club. I was even a Girl Scout, but like, don't tell anybody because it wasn't cool. And I enjoyed leading those things. And she said, well, clubs are like business. You pull people together and you get things done. And I said, oh, done. I'm going to go into business. And, I like leading clubs, so I'll go lead a business. And when I looked up, those people were called CEOs. So at the ripe age of 16, I came home and told my parents, I'm going to be a CEO.
Wow. That's amazing.
And then I spent my career working toward it. And sure enough, I became a CEO by the time I was 40. And so my career was very intentionally executed on.
Did you have an inkling at that time as to why being a CEO was important to you?
Well, it's funny. I really didn't know what that meant to be a CEO, right? Like I said, I just knew I liked leading clubs. But what I did know is the reason I liked leading clubs is I found that when I was actually leading, number one, I could have influence over what we actually did, over where we spend time,
right?
Over priorities. The other thing that happened is people got a chance to see me and what I was capable of. And I say that because I grew up in environments in which people did not give me the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
They would see me walk through the door and they'd make a set of assumptions about me.
Yeah.
And I just found that if I could actually be in front, if I could actually lead, then more people could see me and they could appreciate me for who I was. So, and it also gave me, frankly, more control, because back to people didn't treat me very well. Well, if you're leading, it actually gives you more control of your environment. So you're not always in situations in which you can be taken advantage of. So that's why leadership was important to me. Now, as I said, I just took that and said, leading clubs, leading business. But I really had no idea when I came home and said I wanted to be a CEO, what a CEO actually did.
Yeah. There is so many lessons in there. I think one, it's a beacon of hope to, I think, anyone who's a first generation college student, right? First in their family to do so. And also, I think people who are battling even today situations that are not conducive to them. It's so heartening to hear how you were able to overcome these challenges, because honestly, no 6-year-old should have to go through what you did.
Thank you.
But you found it in you to overcome and rise above the circumstances that you had. It's a phenomenal story. You've had such a storied career, from being, the first African American woman to lead a large business in IBM, to so many other things. But it's been also a story full of twists and turns and seemingly unusual choices. So tell us a little bit about that journey and what drove some of those choices.
Sure. So first, I started out my career in IBM, and the first unusual choice is upon graduating from Wharton, I took a job selling computers. Now, you have to understand, Johanna, my friends, my colleagues at school, they were going off to be investment bankers, right? And Procter and Gamble product managers and international financial analysts and hedge fund. They would write all these sexy, cool. And I'm going to go like sell computers? Like, what the heck, right? Nobody does that. But the reason I did it is I had done the research back to how to improve my odds. I decided I wanted to get involved in tech because this was the early 80s and tech was exploding. And I'd heard that if you pick industries that are growing, that companies within those industries are always short on resources because they're growing. And therefore, if you're good at what you do, you can move farther, faster. And I said, okay. So I picked tech and I picked IBM because at the time they were the behemoth. They were the NVIDIA or the, Microsoft, Google of the day, right? I looked at it and said, well, who are the CEOs and where'd they come from?
Yeah.
And in doing the research, it turned out every single CEO at IBM started out in sales. Now, I didn't know why. I didn't know the benefit. I just knew that must be how to get on the path to power. So that's why I took that job. But it was totally, people were like, what? It was not what people would have expected. And as it turned out, hindsight, I know exactly why a lot of salespeople became CEOs. You learn so much in sales that you need to use in leadership. Throughout my career, I've used more of what I learned during my sales career than probably any other role I've had since then. But so anyway, so started out in sales, rose through the ranks, sales management, then general management, running operations in the US, got the opportunity to run a multi-billion-dollar division overseas.
Wow.
Got to the point where my boss, John Joyce, reported to the CEO of IBM. So I was two steps down, but it wasn't clear. And in fact, it actually seemed to get signals that it wasn't going to happen, that I would actually have a chance to compete for CEO of IBM. And I thought, here I am. I was, at the time in my late 30s, and I wanted to become a CEO. So I thought, if it's not going to happen here, then I need to figure out how I improve my odds to make it happen. So I decided that I needed to make the really hard decision of leaving IBM and going after my CEO role. And I said, all right, tech is still growing. At the time, this is the late 90s. Silicon Valley's booming, everything internet's booming. I got the opportunity to become president of Blockbuster.com, which was at the time a behemoth, right, in its space, and build that division for them. So joined Blockbuster, built up Blockbuster.com, but learned along the way that, they don't really have the vision for the future. So decided, okay, this was not the right call. Let me get to Silicon Valley, right, where there's lots of different opportunities. So indeed, got an opportunity to be the chief marketing officer and EVP of sales of a company called Northpoint. They were early in the high-speed internet DSL space. And then from there, they were acquired by AT&T, then became this chief marketing officer, and then chief marketing officer and EVP of sales at LoudCloud, Ben Horowitz and Mark Andreessen's company that ultimately became Opsware. And then when that was transitioning from LoudCloud to Opsware, that's when I went after my CEO job. And that's when I got the opportunity to become CEO of a very broken company called Zaplet that we renamed MetricStream.
Oh my goodness.
I helped with a great team turn that around and ran that for 15 years. And now I serve on Fortune 500 public boards and coach people on the path to become CEO. And I speak and try to inspire more people to be able to achieve their aspirations.
It's so interesting that, many people, when they're asked, could you have predicted where you would end up? They'll always say, no, you can't really have a career plan because you just, things happen. You sort of go with the flow. You pick things you love and then, sort of chart your course accordingly. But I think it's so refreshing to hear your perspective, which is you can actually really be intentional about your career from day one. You can set a goal for yourself. You can do the research that tells you how to actually get to that goal. And then you can make the moves intentionally that get you there. I mean, it's fascinating, truly fascinating. And thank you for sharing that.
Oh, absolutely. Because people hear folks say, well, I didn't know, it just kind of happened. And that's true. It can just happen. The problem is the odds that it will, quote, just happen for you are minuscule, right? Minuscule. There's 350 million people in the US. Okay. I mean, how many CEOs are there? So it's the odds, right? So being intentional really just helps you improve your odds. And yes, it's the planning, it's whatever, but it's also being willing to make the trade-offs and the decisions and do the work required, right, to then execute on the plan. So it's not just good enough to have a plan. You've got to be willing to actually make the trade-offs, the decisions, the work, right, to actually execute on it.
So beautifully said. Let's talk a little bit about MetricStream. So, as CEO of MetricStream, you engineered one of the most epic transformations ever and inspired the Harvard case becoming a CEO. Take us to the early days in 2003 when you were just coming in. What were you walking into?
Oh my goodness. It was a mess. So first you have to understand this was 2000 December of 2002. I took that job, which was, barely a year after the dot-com bubble burst.
Wow.
Zaplet, which is what it would have been called, had been a high flyer. They'd raised $100 million
Oh
during
my.
that bubble period. And when I got there, they had 10 million, less than 10 million left. And now,
Wow.
well, that sounds like a lot. They were burning $1.5 million a quarter.
Oh my goodness.
Right. So it wasn't actually a lot. When you look at that, they were on their way out of business, right? They hadn't had a new customer actually come and buy something in the last 6 months, right? The existing customers, they were really struggling because the market was terrible. And the product that they created, things had changed in terms of market demand, et cetera. So this was a huge turnaround. I knew it was a turnaround, but whenever you get in, things are always worse than you realize. So much.
That's true.
So it's coming in and figuring out, first of all, okay, how do you get, this team was pretty demoralized, right? They've been a high flyer. Everybody wanted to work for this company to whoosh, right? People are leaving. So first you've got to actually get people, bought in so that you have something to work with. Because if everybody leaves, one person can't do anything as it relates to an overall right company. So that was first. Then second, we had to figure out how to come up with a product that people actually wanted. Because if nobody's buying your product, it means what you have, people don't want.
Right.
So how do we develop a product with not a lot of resources and money, right, to do this? And third, you had to stop the financial bleeding.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm burning $1 million a quarter, I'm going to be out of business in 2 years. So those were the three big things that I had to focus on.
It's such a testament to, I guess, how fickle the dot-com bubble was, right? I mean, I'm sure they had a product market fit originally, but clearly the amount of money they had burned and where they were when you joined them, they clearly did not have a product market fit anymore. So it's a fascinating story. So how did you go after
Those three things.
top three priorities?
Yeah, so the first two, I really combined in my first message to the team. So here I am, I'm now being introduced to the team as their CEO. And I'm thinking about this. It's like, okay, well, what can I say? I mean, picture these people. They're sitting here saying, all right, we're in a dying company. They brought in somebody. By the way, I'm not an engineer. I'm not from the Valley. I don't look like a typical thing, right? So walking in as a Black woman anyway, right? You have that whole dynamic. So again, not getting the benefit of the doubt. So how do I come in and actually get the team behind me?
Right.
So you have to acknowledge, the work and the positive things they've done, but at the same time, make clear what we have to do to get there. So I walked in and said, hey, what you guys have done is basically terrible. We've got to figure out a new fit. That's not going to work.
That doesn't work.
And frankly, it's not true, right? So the message I delivered was, listen, you created over the last several years a remarkable product, right? You really did. The challenge is you fell in love with your product. When you fall in love with your product, it's like falling in love with your baby. All right, you have your baby's born, just the cutest, most adorable, right? Nobody can tell you your baby's ugly. Nobody. Oh, no. You just haven't seen her in the right light. Wait till she gurgles, right? Just tickle her belly and see her little lips, right? You're not locking, right? No. You would defend, you support. But meanwhile, no matter what people say, you make sure your baby has everything it needs, right? All the love, the care, the feeding, the attention, right? Everything. Well, when you fall in love with your product, you do everything for your product. You're focused on your product. You're not focused on the market.
Yeah.
And when the market tries to tell you, oh, you really should, oh, no. You just don't know how to use it. Let me just do some more training. Oh, no. You just haven't seen this feature, right? And what this does. Oh, no, you don't hear.
Yeah.
So the key is, right? What I told them was, listen, it's okay. You just fell in love with the product. Now we have to fall in love with the market. That way, we know exactly what our market segment needs. We know how to meet the needs, right? So that was the shift. And in doing that, it then gave us latitude to go understand, what does the market need? Now, how do we take what we have and evolve it, right, to meet the market needs? So that was the general message, right, around kind of product and getting the fit. And then we had to do the hard work, which is let's go understand the market, right? And find a problem, which is what's also key. You have to find a problem that we could solve, hopefully better than anyone else.
Right.
And one that would not require a lot of R&D. Yeah. I didn't have a lot of money to kind of go right. And the good news is, after talking to I talked to a lot of smart people, we did research, I'm just like, okay. And what I wanted to know was, don't tell me what to do with MetricStream. I just wanted to know, tell me what the big problems are that companies are facing. And what I kept hearing was this whole thing about compliance. Since 2000, now we're now to 2000.
The Symons-Oxley era and all of
right, Sarbanes-Oxley, Enron had happened, right? So this whole compliance, risk management, we don't know what you do about it, but that's really a struggle. And I was like, I looked around, not a lot of people were doing anything about it. And I thought, okay, what is compliance and risk management? It's basically process management. Yeah. I just focus, well, we were doing process management, so we can just optimize. Anyway, so bottom line is, we went after what we called comprehensive compliance and risk, which fortunately for us in 2008, January, the Magic Quadrant for Gartner announced there's a brand new market segment, and it's called governance, risk, and compliance. Right? So this was years later, we evangelized, and finally the market is coming to us. And MetricStream, which is what we were called by then, is a leader. Yes, right? Isn't that what you work towards when you're a startup? It's like, yes, we're finally recognized, we're a leader. Our phone finally starts ringing proactively. Yeah. We're like, we made it, right? We're hiring salespeople and implementation people. We're like, we're ready, we're going, we're on the track.
On an upward trajectory.
And then, bam, fall of 2008 happens. Financial crisis unveils itself. Everything comes to a screeching halt. We finally.
Oh my God, must have been devastating. I can imagine yet another life in that situation.
Exactly. Oh exactly. Goodness. After finally, right, all this work getting there, getting recognized, boom. So now,
how do you even have the energy to go through one more mega transformation?
I know. It was one of those things where you're like, can you believe this? Because of course, what we've done is we had hired, right? We're now ramping for this demand, and our whole model was great. We're finally seeing this slope in terms of our growth. In 2009, we'll go raise money on the growth and trajectory we've done, and we were going to be good. So when everything stopped and we've already built for the growth, we're now upside down again. Oh my goodness. So then it became what do you do? Do you fold or do you fight? Sean, it was one of those things where it's like, we have worked so hard. We know there's a need for what it is that we've got, right? So I was talking to the leadership team candidly about, what are we going to do here? Because we're going to be on fumes. Right. This is going to be hard if we fight. Right. We're going to have to take a pay cut. I mean, this is not like we can just, to give the team credit. Everybody said, I said, listen, I'm in if you guys are in. I think we can do it. I think this is a business here. It's the inspiring piece. Went around the room, everybody was in. People took pay cuts. I came home and said to my late husband, well, what do you think if I don't pay myself for a year? And by the way, he was a stay-at-home dad. I was the only wager. So this was not like, we'll just kind of. So anyway, but you know what? We did it, and we fought. Yeah. 2009, where it was literally, there were times when it was invoice payment to payroll. I mean, it was literally. Oh my God. Yes, we were so skinny. It was just, there were times where I'd go to bed Thursday night saying, I hope to God we got that check in so we can make payroll on Friday. Yeah. Right. Or it would have to slip till it was Monday. But we made through that year, and we actually grew the business despite. Oh, wow. That's amazing. Which says there was a real need. right? Says it was a real need. So we made it. We scraped, we fought, we came together as a team, and we just did what we had to do, right, to make it through that period.
Yeah. I want to ask you maybe a difficult follow-up question, if you don't mind.
Not at all.
Going through one transformation is hard. Going through two is killing. You could have walked away, but you chose to stay and fight. What was it that made you choose to stay and fight?
We had built a really good team.
Yeah.
And I believed that the product that we were bringing to market was really one that was needed. The mantra that always goes through my head is don't let them win. And I was like, external forces. I mean, this is not us. It's not because we're screwing up, right? It's not because we didn't build the right thing. It's not because we have a crappy team. It's not because it's not all those things within our control.
Yeah.
Right? We're all right. So I'm like, it's really the external forces. Well, I've been fighting external forces my whole life.
Yeah.
And I was like, damned if I'm going to let them win now. So, that was a big part of it.
You were the perfect CEO for them at the time.
Yeah, I don't know about the perfect one, but we made it through. And then, so that was number one, frankly, because I had to get my head into the game and the fight.
Yes.
And the second was, everybody had worked so hard. I didn't want them to think if we folded that, gosh, we did all that for naught, right? It didn't work. So there was a whole team. There were families, they were counting on MetricStream payroll, right? To support their kids and I was just like, I just don't want to walk away from this. Although, it sure would have been easier just to walk away and find another job.
That's such a great story. And, your turnaround and the story of it is just, mind blowing. I don't have words for it. It's so interesting because it's exactly what we talk about in mindful leadership. Sometimes you're tempted to take the easy way because it just seems like, the pain would end.
Right.
And you'd be able to move on to bigger and better things. But thinking beyond yourself, being able to connect who you are and the forces that make you who you are, the don't let them win spirit, connecting that to how you lead, and then how you translate your purpose into everyday actions that really helped your team thrive and the organization get back its swag. Truly, truly phenomenal story and such a great exemplar of mindful leadership. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh, absolutely. But I also had just a phenomenal team.
Yeah.
The teamwork was amazing during that period.
This podcast is brought to you by Just Human. We offer a broad range of leadership development solutions, including mindful leadership workshops and executive coaching. To learn more, visit us at justhuman.io. And now, back to the podcast. You've often been among the first, the few, or the only in way too many spaces that perhaps weren't quite ready for you. What was that experience like? And could you share maybe a story from that time and how did you navigate it to succeed?
Oh my goodness. So many stories. So not knowing, where people are in their careers that are listening, I'll give you one very early on. I'll give you one in the middle, and I'll give you one at the end. Does that work?
Sure.
Okay. So early on, you have to picture this. So I told you, started IBM, started out in sales. What I didn't tell you was I got married early, like 2 months into my career, I got married and wanted to have kids right away. Because my thought was I'll get pregnant with the first child while I'm going through training, right?
Yeah.
Well, I did training ahead of time. So I actually went on quota 7 months pregnant. I'm in Dallas, Texas. My customer is the Southland Corporation. They owned the 7-Eleven stores. And when you walk in, I'm selling computers, so I'm talking to the people in IT. There was one female manager, right? It was like a director in IT. And the men wore suits and cowboy boots, and everybody was sweetheart, honey, sweet pea, child, right? That kind of stuff. And I'm walking in, I'm going, big belly, right? Black woman in a very white environment. And I'm like, how am I ever going to sell anything if they're not even taking me seriously. Right. But I'm still working on how do I get my credibility? And I'm sitting in an office with one of the executives. His name was Mac McElroy. And Mac gets a call because back then there's no cell phones or anything. Somebody's looking for me. And he says, he looks at me with his phone. He says, oh, hold on. Sweet Pea is right here. Hands me the phone. Well, I go to grab the phone. I cover the receiver and I look at him and I pause just enough for him to kind of go, like, and then I say, Mac, my name is Shellye. And then I take the call. All right. I take the call and then I put it down and I don't bring it up again. That's all I say, Mac. And I say it nice. I have a little smile. Mac, my name is Shellye. He only called me Shellye after that.
Wow.
What I learned, right, through trial and error, which is why I share that story, is if you call people out in a way that makes them feel embarrassed or uncomfortable, they're going to either purposely or unconsciously take it out on you.
Yes.
Right? Because now they're going to feel uncomfortable around you. So they're going to avoid you. They're going to this, right? Well, I'm in sales. I have to have relationships. I can't have people not right doing that. So you can't call people out, but therefore you have to learn how to get your message across in a way that doesn't make them feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So by doing it very nicely, succinctly, I didn't have a big, you make me feel uncomfortable when you say blah. I didn't, none of that.
Yeah.
He could take it, not be embarrassed. And I never brought it up again. And I keep the same tone, feel, emotion in all my conversations. And we're good.
Yeah.
So
such a great story. What's amazing about that story is that bold looks different. Or it can just come from quiet confidence, like it did in your case, and conveys the message equally effectively. So it's a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that. Love to hear more.
Absolutely. Another one would be walking in. I have an assignment now over in Japan. So here I am. I'm going over to Japan as a senior executive, and I'm the first Black female ever sent by IBM on an international assignment. So here I show up. Now I'm coming into Japan. Now Japan is very, very male dominated. All right. As a matter of fact, my boss, his send-off words to me were, Shellye, just remember, because he worked in Japan for a while. In Japan, 3 things are important to be successful in business. I said, okay, I'm ready. Got my paper right. I'm ready to write it down. What's important? And he said, number 1, being male. Really? Okay. Number 2, age, wisdom, which means you need to be old. I was 35, maybe, right? At the time. I ain't got that either. And I'm going, okay, he said 3 things important. I'm failing on 2. So what the heck? And he goes, the 3rd is intelligence. He said, so you better figure out how to maximize it. I was like, okay. I have responsibility for Asia Pacific, but Japan is about 75% of my business. The head of Japan is probably 63, 64 years old. I'm 35. So I didn't really fit. So it's all about how do I establish Shellye in Japan, right? And so I'm getting ready to meet with this senior executive for our very first meeting. And in Japan, there's a lot of setup for meetings because a meeting should really just be a confirmation of decisions that have already been made. So I meet with this number 2 person several times. Now, this number 2 person, if this meeting doesn't go well, he's in trouble, right? So afternoon before my final meeting with him, where I'm going to meet with Yamamoto-san, he says to me, almost pleading, he's like, Shellye, this is a first meeting. This is, a get to know you meeting. He said, this is like a first date. All right. I'm like, okay, first date. Because a lot of times Americans come in, right, strong. So that was fine. I'm walking to work the next morning and I pass a flower shop. First date. I back up. I go by a huge bouquet of flowers, huge. I bring them in and I put them in my cupboard. Yamamoto-san comes, right? Yamamoto-san, Shellye-san, right? We say hello, we do the greetings. I said, Ahara-san has told me this is our first meeting. Let's get to know each other. He's like, yes, his English is a little broken, but it's good. And I said, Ahara-san said, this is our first date. Yamamoto-san smiles, right? He nods. And I said, so I bought you flowers. And he's like, he's got this look on his eyes like, okay. And so I open up the cupboard and I literally pull out this bouquet. And so this is either going to go really well or really bad.
Really poorly.
So I hand him the flowers and I'm looking at him. And finally, he just breaks out into this huge smile. We have a laugh. It's all good. And so that just broke the ice. Now, here's what happened that I didn't realize that actually was a great benefit. He now had to carry this huge bouquet of flowers back to his office, all the way up through Asia Pacific headquarters, into Japan headquarters, up the elevator into his office. So by the time he gets to his office, everybody's talking about Yamamoto-san with the flowers, right? And therefore, Shellye-san became somebody that people heard about. Anyway, it was really fascinating. But that's about taking risks. But as well as when you say, how did you break in? I kind of leaned into this whole female first date. You try to do things that show that, no, I'm not from here, but I want to be part, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, so that would be that story. And then the last one would be about how to take help when you're the only one. So I got my first board seat. I was like 42, 43 years old. I was the youngest member on the board by about a decade. And I was the only African-American. And there was one other female, but then she had to step off the board. So at first I was finding it very difficult to get my thoughts or my ideas actually heard, right? Or discussed. And so I said, got to fix this. So I reached out to a board member that I'd worked on developing a relationship with. And I was vulnerable. I told him, I said, Louis, I find in meetings that when I make comments or references, nobody really picks up on it. So I feel like I'm not really being heard. I really appreciate if you could help me. And I said, what help looks like to me is, I'm not saying agree with everything I say. That's not what I want. But if I say something that makes sense to you, or you think is a good idea, I'd appreciate it if you would just verbalize it, just reinforce it. All right. And to his credit, he did.
Wow.
And after doing that for like 2 meetings, I was golden, right? I was heard and it all worked out fine. So the other thing is realize you're not alone. Just because you're facing a challenge, be vulnerable, ask for help, right? I didn't pretend there wasn't anything happening. I told him, here's what that's my perception, right? But I'd love your help. So those would be 3 stories that I would share on different ways to deal with different situations.
Such amazing stories, each one of them. I think one of the interesting insights from your Japan story, a lot of people go through international assignments, end up judging the culture they're going to rather than integrating. And what's amazing about your story is that you led with integrating, finding a way to be effective in that culture in a way that honors and respects it, which I think is truly remarkable. I think international assignments, I can't say enough about them because they really help you discover who you are as a leader in so many ways and who you are as a leader in different contexts. So what's really at the core? And so I think it's been really impactful in my life. And so, it was great to hear your story, sharing that as well. And
I fully agree with you.
Yeah.
I fully agree with you. I encourage people to take international assignments.
Let's talk a bit about limiting beliefs. You talked about one, which was asking for help, right? And how you overcame that. Many of us, struggle with asking for help. But we have so many limiting beliefs that hold us back. So I'd love to hear if you have had any limiting beliefs that have ever held you back or had a hold on you, and how did you overcome it?
Imposter syndrome. I've suffered from imposter syndrome my entire life. And I still do from time to time, which is really crazy. But so that's probably one of my big, limiting beliefs is just oh my gosh, I don't really belong here. Wait till they figure out I'm not as smart as they think I am, right? What makes them think so you have all that stuff, despite the confidence that comes across that's in the back of the minds. That would be one. And the other one was because of the experiences I had growing up that I wouldn't fit in, that I wouldn't be accepted, that I wouldn't be included, right? That's also kind of back there. So those 2 things are probably the biggest limiting beliefs that I faced coming through. And in terms of overcoming them, I'll take them in reverse order. So the one about not fitting in or not being accepted, what I learned to do was just create my own groups. So that way I didn't have to worry if another group wouldn't accept me. I just created my own. So, and an example of that is when I moved to Silicon Valley, because every time I moved around a ton, right? I've lived and worked in 18, 19 different places. So I'm still always that new kid on the block. And when I moved to Silicon Valley 20 plus years ago, I'm like, all right, I need my people, right? I need a group or whatever. And so I started my own. I just took the things that I like to do, which I love to cook. I like to eat. I like nice wine. I like socializing with people. And I put them all together and decided I was going to form what I was calling a gourmet dinner group. And it was a way of putting all those things together. And literally, as I met people I thought were interesting, I just say, do you like to cook? I never asked if they were good cooks. That didn't matter. All that mattered is, do you like to cook? And before you knew it, we had a group and we were meeting, and I've been leading this gourmet dinner group now for over 20 years.
Wow.
We are still in effect. We even travel at times together. There's like 50 people in the group. I mean, this is not a small thing. So, but what it's done is I just created my own out of fear that people may not want to include me in theirs. Now, I'm not saying that's the case now, but I'm just saying it just created this approach of mine, which is don't give them a chance to exclude me. I'll just create my own. When I was CEO, I realized why people said it's lonely at the top. I'm like, oh my God, I don't have any peers. It's the first time I have no peers. I need peers. So I started a group. I pulled together women that were also building companies, and we create each other's peers. So I just learned that I just create my groups. The other thing on imposter syndrome, what I learned in doing research is almost everybody suffers from it.
Yeah.
So it's actually not me, right? And if you feel it, it means it's not really you. If everybody has it, it means it's kind of in the air. This imposter syndrome thing, this voice that's saying, wait till they figure out you're not as smart as they think they are, right? This voice is like, wait till they realize that you don't belong, that you're not ready, that nobody, right? All this voice, turn that voice off. Just realize it's not real. That voice, it's not real. Turn it off.
Yeah.
And if I couldn't turn it off, then the next piece was to realize I only feel it when I'm facing something new.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, why did I get something new? A new could be a new job. It could be an invitation to join a group. It could be being asked to speak, right? Anything new you might feel, oh my God. Well, you have to realize people wouldn't ask you to do it. They wouldn't offer you the job. They wouldn't ask you to lead.
Yeah.
They wouldn't ask you to speak if they didn't think and believe that you could do it.
Yeah.
So if you can't believe in yourself, believe them when they tell you that you're ready by offering you the opportunity. And if that doesn't work, you still can't take the job, or you still can't say yes, or whatever it is. If that doesn't work, then it's time to realize that you need to give yourself the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, really think about it, you always figure it out eventually.
Yeah.
Right? You always figure it out. So you're going to figure this out too. And if you're going to figure it out, then go ahead and act like you're confident, because you're not confident that you know the job, but you're confident that you're going to figure it out.
Yes.
And let that confidence show.
I love that reframe.
So that you can move forward. So those are my 3 steps for pushing through anyway.
I love it. I love it. Is there a recent example where you did have imposter syndrome?
Oh my gosh.
You overcame it?
Yeah, so I'll tell you. So here I was. This was a few years back. I've been serving on public boards at this point for like 10 years. I've been a CEO for like 12 years, right? I've done all these things, and I get invited to join the board of Verizon.
Yeah.
Wow. Yes, right? Fortune. It's a Fortune at the time 16 company, right? We're like, yes.
Right.
So here I am. I'm all ready. I'm getting ready to walk into my first board meeting, open the door, and it hits me. Oh my God, that's the CEO of Walgreens. That is the former head of the SEC. That's the former Secretary of Transportation.
Wow.
Oh my God, how am I going to hold my own in this group, right? How are they going to think? All the voices. Literally, it's like, Shellye, snap out of it, right? Snap out of it. You are going to figure this out. You always do. Shoulders back, head up, lock in seem like you know what you're going to do because you will figure this out too, right?
Yeah.
And then I walked in. So yes, it absolutely still happens.
I think that's like such a message of hope to so many because everyone's like, oh, if you're successful, you're probably way past imposter syndrome. And I love that by sharing the story and by speaking so openly about imposter syndrome, you're giving so many people hope that, okay, it's not, it's like a frenemy you live with, right? But hopefully try and control. And you get better at it every day.
You do. And the other thing, I do think there's an upside to imposter syndrome. And the
Mm-hmm.
upside is because you feel that way, you'll probably spend more time preparing. You'll
Yes.
spend
Oh,
more
I
time
certainly feel
getting
that. Yeah.
ready and studying, and that in itself will actually make you better.
Yes.
So,
So
if you had all
true.
the confidence, you wouldn't do all that, and you probably wouldn't do as well as quickly. So
So
there is
true.
an
I feel the
upside.
same. Looking back at your journey, there are certainly some themes that carry through, right? There is this whole theme of don't let them win, which we talked about. There is a theme of going after untapped potential and helping people and organizations realize untapped potential. There is a theme of helping others, being of service. I'd love to know, why is that so important for you?
I literally feel compelled to help and support others. And
Hmm.
I do believe that comes from the little girl that
Hmm.
I was that needed
Hmm.
help and support and didn't
Wow.
always have it. And when I did, it made such a difference.
Hmm.
And so I feel very fortunate to have had the experiences I've had. And I want more people to have it. People have so much potential, so much potential.
Yeah.
But I honestly feel that most don't get the opportunity to contribute, to even 50 or 60% of their capability.
Yeah.
And it's not because they're not smart. And it's
Right.
not because they're not willing to work hard.
Right.
Right? And it's not because they're not ambitious.
Right.
Many times it's because they don't get feedback on how to improve or change something that might need work. They don't
Mm.
get opportunities. They don't get support, right? They don't get help figure out how to get over the hurdle. There's all these other factors. And I'm just like, gosh, there's nothing special about me, right? And so if people on the way hadn't taken time to support me, to help me, to give me whatever, I may not have been able to do the things that I've done. So I
Mm.
want more people to be able to do that. And it's why I wrote the book, because I was trying very hard just to
Yeah.
share. Listen, I'm not special. Look, here's all the challenges I had, right? You can do this too. And it's also why I launched recently something called Ignite Ambition, which is a nonprofit trying to share mentoring advice at scale, right?
Yeah.
So I just feel compelled to help because I want more people to
Yeah.
contribute. So helping people figure out where they actually
Yeah.
belong and where they contribute the most and how to work through challenges that are
Yeah.
preventing them. I mean, gosh, if we could all just spend more time doing that, I think we'd see so much more productivity and so much more output from
And a
this
better
country.
world. And a better world. Oh my
Yes.
God, that is so powerful. I have goosebumps. Who was the best leader you've ever worked with? And what do you remember most about them?
Oh my goodness. I've been fortunate to have some good ones and I've had some challenging ones too. But the best leaders I worked with were ones that could clearly articulate
Hmm.
where we were going and what they wanted from me,
Ah.
as well as keep raising the bar on me, but doing it in a way that was supportive.
Mm.
That's how to get the best out of me, right? And
Mm.
so what I found, so those are my best leaders. But what I found was ultimately the best leaders are the ones that don't just do that for me, but are able to figure out how to get the most out of everyone. And by the way, that's not by treating everybody the same
Right.
because we're all different. We're all motivated differently.
Right.
We're all incented differently. So it's the
Yeah.
leaders that can really figure out, all right, how do I truly get the best right out of everyone by adjusting their styles to get the best out of everyone? To me,
Yeah.
those are the best leaders.
And that's so interesting because you can't do that unless you truly care about each member on your team.
And that's the word. When you said care, it's like capital letters, underline, exclamation point. If you were asking me what's the one thing, one attribute for a strong leader, people have to believe that you care about them as a person. Because fundamentally, as individuals, we want to feel cared for. At work, we want to feel cared about too. Do you care about me? And are you not saying it? Are you showing it?
Yes.
And that's the key.
Beautifully said. So many more questions for you, Shellye, but mindful of time, we've tried to crunch some of them in a rapid fire section. So this is meant to be quick questions, quick answers, and I have
Okay.
a few of them for you.
I'm
So
ready.
ready?
Ready.
Okay. First one. If your life was made into a movie, what would be the title and what would be the theme song?
Oh my gosh. The title would be Live Intentionally.
Ah,
And the theme song would be I Will Survive.
I love it. I love it. Great one. What's a book that's been life-changing for you?
If I can say a book that I think everybody should read is $1 Trillion Coach. It's about one of my mentors, Bill Campbell, and it's all about caring leadership.
Wow, love it. You wake up one day and realize you're a superhero. What's your superpower?
Figuring out what makes every individual tick.
Wow,
But
I love it. Good one. If you could send a message to little Shellye at 6 in the schoolyard, what would you say?
what doesn't kill you absolutely makes you stronger.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. So powerful. What is one thing that you've learned about yourself in all these years that surprised you?
The fact that once I was willing to become more vulnerable, I actually became stronger.
Wow.
The more I let people into me, the more they felt they knew me, could trust me, and therefore it actually made for a stronger Shellye in terms of a more effective, right, better leader, made all those things. So I found that the more vulnerable I was, asking for help is the ultimate in vulnerability because it says, I don't know how to do this, right? The more vulnerable I became, the better leader I became.
Wow, that is so powerful. And what I'm realizing from what you're saying is that you can't be authentic without vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
That's really powerful. What's one piece of career advice that has helped you in your career?
Manage my calendar. And at first, when I first got that advice, I thought it was the dumbest thing I ever heard. What do you mean manage my calendar? My calendar is being driven by everybody else. I've got all these meetings, I've got all this stuff, right? But I manage my calendar this day, which is I go back and look at the prior quarter and I look at how I spent my time. And then I look at my priorities, mine, and say, does it match with my priorities? When I first started doing that, it didn't, right? So now I go back, reflect, and I tweak things so that it matches my priorities. You can control more than you think. How you spend your time should match with your priorities.
I love that. That's so true and so rare. Your best selling book, Unapologetically Ambitious, is truly a treasure.
Oh.
Is there a tip from there that you'd like to share with our listeners today?
Just remember, you own your career, not your boss, not your mentor, not HR, not your partner, right? Friends, no, you do. So if you own your career, then you need to spend the time and effort to actually manage your career, right? You would never spend $4,000 on an airline ticket, right? Plan this amazing vacation, tell everybody, oh, I'm taking time off, put the dog in the kennel, the whole bit, then drive to the airport, get on the plane, buckle the seatbelt, and then look at the pilot and say, so where are we going anyway? Right? You wouldn't do it. We do it with our careers every day. Every day. We invest in education, we invest in training, we invest in professional groups, right? All these things. We show up at work, we go to work, and then we wait. Tell me what to do next. Oh, no, you own your career, right? Be intentional about it.
Love it. Love it. Oh my, so many insights, so many lessons, and so many stories. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much, Shellye, for being on the podcast, sharing your learnings with our listeners today. Truly, truly a joy.
You are very, very welcome. And if you want more, you can find me on Shellye, spelled with the YE.com. And Night Ambition, or you can follow me on social media. I strive very hard, as you know, just to put out inspiration, ideas, thoughts, things that can be helpful as you build your life.
Wonderful. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us. We'd love to hear from you. Please rate, review, and subscribe to the Mindful Leadership Podcast brought to you by Just Human. We are a growth accelerator for our clients, helping your people and businesses thrive through human-centered, ecosystem-based people solutions. To learn more, visit us at justhuman.io and schedule a 30-minute free call with us.